Hello, and welcome to another episode of the Chelnut Show. As always, we are your hosts. We have the fabulous Kirsha Fox, author of Son of Deception and The White Leaf Child. She is a homeschooling mom of four, avid reader, and gamer.
And my co-host is Julie J.K. Allen, editor, author, and author coach. She's a fantasy and horror author who loves to put magic in everything. Thanks so much for joining us.
Yes, and we're very excited to welcome our guest tonight. Why don't you tell us all about T.M. Perkins?
Yes, T.M. Perkins. I'm especially excited for this episode because she was the first author I ever beta read for way back when I got started in this. So that's exciting. She is a YA paranormal and urban fantasy author. She said she'd love to live in a Halloween town and live forever in a fall landscape, but she currently occupies northern Kentucky with her supportive family. Welcome.
Hi, guys.
Welcome to the show. Yes.
Thank you for having me.
Mm-hmm.
Yes, thank you so much for joining us. Tell us a little bit about your author journey. What got you started as a writer, and what has it looked like for you?
I started writing probably when I was about sixth grade, and I was really, really bad at it. But I think I just had really supportive friends and teachers who saw how much it meant to me, and they encouraged me, so I kept going. I've been writing on and off, but always YA fiction for as far back as I can remember. I briefly worked with an agent. That's probably 10 years ago. Nothing came from that, but I did learn a lot from the experience, and I took a break after that. And then I decided to self-publish probably about the same time a lot of people did with the pandemic hitting, just to see what would come of that. And that's really where I am today. So
Yeah, no, I love that. Everything's a learning experience, and the great thing about agents is they're a wealth of knowledge. Yeah, so I'm glad you got to learn some things from that. Yeah. So why young adult? Like, what about the genre do you love so much?
I think I like it most because I started reading R.L. Stine, and that's what got me into reading when I hated it before. And
Right.
I just I think adult has too much information and just too much. There's YA has kind of a safety in it, and how much story you get and how much detail. And so I've just always been more comfortable working in there. And also YA is such a, I mean, if the age of YA is basically 11 to 18, and that's just a huge group of people. So there's a lot of variety in there you can work with. So I've just always found that very challenging.
I love writing YA myself. I think that the themes of like figuring out who you are and, you know what I mean, standing up for what you believe in and what do you believe, those themes I love to just grapple with in writing young adults. Yeah, I definitely have so much fun writing young adults. Yeah.
In particular, I think there's the heavy theme of you're just a kid and you don't know anything, and we don't have to respect you or treat you like a person. And it's that teenager turning it around and showing that they can do things even though like they're learning it themselves. You know?
Yeah. And it's such a huge, that, I mean, just you go from being, 11 to 12 to your first dates, your first crush, to your breakups, to your more intimate relationships and dealing with that type of breakup, and then dealing with your friends and their relationships and how that works for you, and then looking at your future. I mean, it's just this huge area to work in. So it makes it really interesting, challenging to try to figure out what part of YA am I in exactly.
Right.
Yeah.
One thing I particularly loved about your book, being the dead girl, was the self-reflection, because she has this chance to look back at her life and realizing all the mistakes that she made. So very many mistakes that she made. And I feel like that's sort of an adult thing that like we see, because we look at our own teenage past and go, oh my gosh, why?
Yeah.
Why?
Yeah.
Even if it's the silly stories we wrote or just the silly social mistakes we made, like there's always this like small cringe we have over our young selves.
Yeah.
So if you're an adult reading that YA, you see that all over again, and you really like it resonates with you. And I think
Yeah.
that teenagers sometimes need to think about that their actions are going like that they do are going to follow them the rest of their life.
Hmm.
And what choices do they want to make so
Yeah.
that when they die, they're not going to regret that.
Oh, so much more now
Right.
than ever before. I mean, I was an 80s, 90s kid, so the
Yeah.
Mhm.
internet was nothing. And now with my daughter, because I'm an older parent, with my daughter, it's like there's social media. I have to warn her about
It's
camera
forever.
phones and
Right.
like
Right.
it's it's
Yeah.
it's crazy. It's crazy navigating it, but yeah, it's a very different space.
It is. Yeah. It really is.
So can you tell us a little bit about your writing process, how you go from like idea to finished draft?
Usually ideas, I kind of obsess over them. Like right now, all I can think about is writing because of I guess all the book banning going on. Is I want to write about a bookstore called Pandora's Box, but it's going to have urban fantasy themes to it. But I just obsess over something for a really long time, and I kind of play it out in my head, and then I start writing it down. I am very much a paper pen kind of person, first draft, and then
Mm-hmm.
I work on the computer. Um, but yeah, I'm pretty good at the obsessing part. So
Right. That kind of
Um,
hyperfixation on.
yes.
yes, yeah,
So you don't get the idea gets you. Like,
yeah,
Right.
yeah.
Right.
all
Get the
right.
writing bug. Yeah. What do you think is like the most important part to writing?
I don't really know. I think maybe for myself, I've gotten to the point where when I write something, I want to see in each project the improvement I've made as a writer.
Mm,
I want to be able to see that I've done better than I did the previous book. I want to see that I've discovered something new for myself and have worked on and did well, like whether it's character development in a new way or complicated or just details the way I explained something. I want to always be able to see that I'm progressing. So
mhm.
I think that's become kind of the main focus for me is I want to be able to see that I did better than I did before.
Yeah, no, that's like what a wonderful and lofty goal to have is just to continue growing and evolving as an author and
Yeah.
getting better and better at your craft. I love that answer. Um, I think it's really great when we have like awareness of like our
Mhm.
strengths and then our not strengths too as writers so that we can like continue to improve and get better because it's like it's one thing um to write a book is amazing, right? But if we want to like keep going with it, then looking at what do I need to work on is like a
Mhm.
great goal to have. Yeah.
Mhm, mhm. Do you feel like your books are more character driven or more plot driven?
Um I really don't. Maybe a little of both. I think
Mhm.
Mm-hmm.
characters are really important because they're the anchors for the people reading the books. They need to be able to connect with one of the characters, but the plot just carries so much. I mean, if either one of those things falls flat,
Right.
it can really destroy the whole story. So I think if anything, maybe I try to keep a good balance of both.
No,
Mhm.
that's a great answer. Ideal world as we have both, right? Yes. I know that. Yeah, I love how you describe characters though as being the anchor that the reader
Hmm.
like has for the story because that's a great way of putting it. Is that like you can have the most exciting plot, but if we don't care about the characters, we're not going to
Hmm.
follow along with their journey, right? We're not going to
Yeah.
read 200 pages about them to see what happens next.
Yeah. And there's also
Yeah,
something about if a reader connects with one and they're having trouble with
yeah.
the other, if they really like what's going on here, they may be a little bit more forgiving about what's going on in this
Right.
area too.
No, that's very
So
Yes.
true.
yeah,
Yeah.
yeah,
Oh
No,
yeah,
that
I totally agree with that. I can't tell you how many like split point of view books I've read where you get to that
right.
one character stuff and you're like, ah, do I have to?
Right, you have that one
You
character
you
that you don't like, you gotta read a whole
you just
chapter
slog
about,
through
yeah.
it because you have to
yeah,
know what happens, but you hate this
right,
person.
yeah,
Right. The other character is so important to you though, so you have to like know what happens. Yeah.
yep,
Yeah. No, that's the saving grace for us authors is that if we have one character that's not so likable, the other ones will carry the weight.
yes, yes. Something will
Love
help you through. Yeah.
Yeah, yeah. Do you have a favorite author and what do you think they do well?
I don't know that I have a favorite author. Um, I really like old school R.L. Stine because that's what got me back
Mhm.
into reading. And the thing
Right,
that really hooked me was his ability to just create the atmosphere to be so easy to be part of. Like I
right,
was 13 reading about these 16, 17-year-old kids doing these crazy things. I didn't know what high school was. So it was going to be
right.
whatever he told me it was. And that was going to be great because they were older kids. But it just made me realize it was really important to just make you like you almost had to believe it while you're writing it. You have to believe in
Mm,
it because I
yeah,
think that just carried over so well and helps to help and just get you inside of it. Even if you're 12 reading about high school students going on vacation together, you don't really care. You
right,
just
yeah,
like to be part of the atmosphere, and he was really good at building that. So that just stuck
yeah,
with me. Like I'm, older, and that really does still stick with me.
yeah, yeah. No, I agree. I also really enjoyed R.L. Stein's books at a young age, and Goosebumps, all of that.
Yeah,
Like horror is like what my bread and butter that I grew up on. Even though
yeah,
like I don't know if that's the best route for me to have taken, right? But I really like loved reading horror as a kid. There's something so interesting in examining like what scares us and why.
right.
It's
Yeah.
so fun to write. Um, like you write horror as well?
Mhm.
Yeah. So what makes you choose horror? Is it just your love of R.L. Stine really inspired you and you want to stay in that world, or like what draws you to the horror genre? I know we talked about what draws you to young adult, but
I think I just kind of like the adrenaline. Like I
yeah,
kind of like
yeah.
that build up and to see if I can create that for somebody else. Like
Right.
I
There's
think that's fun. So
tension
it
is
it just
so fun in horror. Mhm.
right. It's a challenge trying to find that. But yeah, I mean, I liked being able to sort of create that and give that to somebody else. The idea of being able to do that, that's really what
Right.
drove me to that. Yeah.
Yeah, no, I love that answer too, because it's just like, yeah, there's something so fun about, like I said, examining like what scares us and why, and then
Hmm.
doing that to another person. It can be very therapeutic too, writing horror. I feel like
Yeah.
we've talked on the show about like how we watch true crime shows to relax, right? And
Right.
there's something
Right.
so ironic about that, because it's just like the least comforting
Right.
of
Well,
materials, but we
I
get so much
also
comfort out of watching it.
when I was starting, I kind of grew up in a neurodivergent family, so
Mhm.
emotions weren't always expressed, I guess, like
Right.
accurately. Like, I have like I even to this day, it's like I have to prepare myself to have a reaction to things so that I
Mm,
know I act appropriately because I may feel it, but I'm not going to show anything. It's like I'm
mhm, mhm.
frozen, like I had that misstep. And I took theater in high school, and if anything, it taught me how to act appropriately and how to.
Right.
There's a cause and effect. You don't just walk across the stage. You have to. There's a reason, a purpose, and that really
Mm,
incorporated in writing. But writing thrillers and the fantasy aspect of it, it kind of allowed like my off reactions to make more sense because now they have a
okay.
magical paranormal environment to be reacting to
Right.
and building relationships and bonding was just so much easier in that environment because it didn't have to make sense in the real world. It could make sense for the paranormal reason. And
Mm,
that I think that's why I also lend more towards the paranormal fantasy because it kind of was a place I was able to um, be normal, like, and
okay.
act
Yeah. Yeah.
normally, if that
Right.
makes sense. So I could, and it made my writing made sense in that if I tried to write well, I have tried to write other things, and I have a disconnect, and it's
Mm,
really hard for me to, especially when it comes to like romantic relationships. I just have this
right.
disconnect. But with the paranormal and the horror, like it just works so much better for me. And I think that sometimes people don't realize how much of their emotional state and what they're
Right.
brought up with and what they have to deal with, what your box of tools is to
Yeah.
translate the world and how you view it, how much that
Right.
affects. writing too, and why you may lean towards one thing over another.
No, that is absolutely fascinating to think about. Like it's
Mm-hmm.
something that I think we all know and understand, but we are not conscious of it. You know what I mean? Like we're just not thinking aware like of how that affects us. But like social cues can be tricky. So like if you have problems with social cues, maybe romance is not your genre that you're writing because it's a lot of those little coy flirting, the little subtle things that you know you may struggle with noticing in life, and then like to then write it would feel very awkward. I feel.
And I
Yeah.
had the hyperfixation. So for
Yeah.
me, it was like the easy. It's like I made it too easy to fall in love, and it's like, but
Yeah.
that's how I crushed. So what do you mean that's not
Yeah.
right? It's like, but no,
Right.
they
Well,
don't
you
have the
hyper fixate
chemistry. You
on a
got to show it.
person. Mm-hmm.
Yes. And so
Yeah.
it was kind of mind blowing for me when I was younger, being like, maybe not everybody does that. So I stayed with
Right.
what was safer.
Yeah, no. I mean, I think that it's funny because there's things that like before I met my current partner, I was just like, yeah, that whole like you meet someone and feel like you've known them your whole life. I was like, that's just some stories. But then it actually happened in real life when I met my partner, and it was just like, okay, maybe there is something to the stories because I did feel that way. But like before then I thought, oh, that's just like a romance trope. Like that's not a real thing.
And
Yeah.
I've had both. I mean, with my husband, for me too, it was instant. I just instantly liked him. But I'll tell you, if
Yeah,
he
yeah,
opened
yeah.
his mouth and sounded like a jerk, it would have been done. But
Oh,
it
absolutely.
just, we were able to build on that because we had really good chemistry. It just kept going. But before
Yeah.
that, yeah, I don't know. I just, there was something there for me that I didn't quite make sense. So when I tried to write it, it didn't make sense. It didn't make sense either.
Yeah, yeah. There was like a layer there that was hard to decipher in these interactions between people, and so no, that makes complete sense, and that like that's so interesting to think about, and why I love asking the question like why you choose the genre you write, like because I feel like that is like such an interesting thing that leads us to one direction or another. Yeah, yeah. Do you think there's any one like piece of advice or anything that you have learned from the writing process?
No, but I will, something my sister said to me like 2 years ago that I live by now is she said, not everybody's meant to go with you on your journey. And when I was writing, I feel like I held myself back a lot because I didn't want to offend people or cause conflict or make someone mad. And so I wouldn't always tell the stories I wanted to tell. And when she said that to me, it was like giving me permission to let go of
Yeah,
my reservations. But I think that's also good for people, like, especially when you're working in a creative space. You know, that your family may love you, your spouse may love you, your siblings may think you're the best thing in the world, but you show them something creative and they're going to look at it and be like, I don't get this at all. And it's okay to be like, I can do every other thing with you, but maybe this, we don't have to, you don't have to go with me. You don't have to have that approval, or you have to have them by your side necessarily. I mean, it's nice, but if they can't give you that support you need, it's okay to be like, well, in this case, I'm going to go by myself. I'm okay. I'm good here. And that can be a lot to take, but then once you realize you're alone when you're doing that anyway, you don't have to, there's no reason that you have to have anyone else standing in that corner with you. So that she said that to me, and I really appreciated that because I needed it. But I've been able to apply it in so many different things. I didn't realize how much I kind of
different ways.
restrained myself. But yeah, I think that's good, especially for creative endeavors, because there's so many different types of creativity, and not everybody. I mean, I don't always get it, but I'm glad you're doing it. So yeah, I think that's a good thing to go by.
I love that advice because it's just like it's so true that like what we write is not going to be for everyone, and a lot of people really struggle because they don't have support from the people that they love the most and are the closest with. They just don't get the writing thing, or you know, for whatever reason. And yeah, that's just like giving yourself permission to be like, that's okay though. Like I don't need that validation from them. They're, you know, they're just not into writing,
Yeah.
or saying that like I can write something different because I'm not going to please everyone, right?
Right. Yeah.
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 And that fear can be absolutely paralyzing.
Yeah.
That
Yeah.
fear of not measuring up to what people are expecting, or is it good enough, or like, is it okay if I have the character do this unlikable thing or be this unlikable
Right.
person, or like, yeah, like it can make it so you never finish your book because you are too scared. And the thing about being like writing a book is, to an extent, you have to be authentic to yourself. Like, if you aren't loving the book that you're writing, and like, it's not going to be like, oh, what's the right word?
You
You can
can't be
read
someone's
books and you can
favorite.
tell sometimes when the author just needed to finish, just needed to finish, power
Yeah.
through. It loses some of its soul, you know.
Yeah.
You can kind of tell when an author is just really loving, like, isn't in love with the story and the characters as you are, you
Yeah.
know. I've definitely read books in a series where I was like, you know what, this wasn't their best work, and I think
Right.
like maybe they got a little burned out and had a deadline.
Yeah. Got a
No.
little flat
Yeah.
there.
Yeah,
For
it
sure.
got a little flat. Maybe
Yeah.
they got tired. So
100%
I
agree.
love that advice of just write the story, have the journey that is meant for you, and be okay if other people, if it's not their cup of tea.
Yeah. I mean, and it's your dream, right? So I mean, I know I've said this, I don't know where I've said, probably on TikTok, but when I first started writing, I mean, the internet didn't exist. The idea of self-publishing, it was all vanity presses. So that was like a no, like just hard no. There was only one way into publishing. Well, now the world's completely different.
Yeah.
And I even talked to my daughter's class once, and I said, you have so much available to you, and you need to utilize all of it. I mean, that I probably should have said this to third graders, but you can be on YouTube, and there's YouTube people now. Like I never would have even thought. I mean, unless you were on prime channels, like who cares? But the world is so different, and there's so many different options. So you can have a dream, but it's your dream. You can change it at any time. You're not giving up or throwing in the rag or settling for less. You're evolving. And I think I was very stuck for a very long time about how success looked and what it needed to look like. And then I
Absolutely.
realized I don't even know that I would have been happy with that, because in the very beginning, I thought I'd be a successful writer in my 20s. And it's like, well, what was I going to do with the rest of my life? Like, what was
Right.
the rest of the plan? But it's all a journey. So yeah, being flexible too, and just being kind to yourself. Yeah. It's all a journey. So it's all good.
Yeah, no, Stephen King himself said, like, write with the door closed, meaning, like, we can't really think about what readers or other people are going to think about our story until it's finished. We just need to be true to the story that we're telling and get it out, and then worry with editing, like, with how other people are going to think of it, right?
Yeah.
Yeah, because, like, you can, like Kirsha was saying, you can get frozen with fear and just, like, not write the story or not tell it authentically.
Right. I think that's my favorite part of the writing process, is when it's just mine and I haven't shared it with anyone yet. So it's just my project, and I can
and it's so special to
fix
you,
it.
and
Yes.
you can
And I
play
can
with
spend
it
all
and
my time
experiment.
on this character or this paragraph or whatever, and it's just my special thing. It's when it goes loose into the world and it's kind of like, well, it was always supposed to do that, but now it's not.
Right.
Now it's scary because now it's for everybody. But yeah, that's that moment that I like, is when it's in house still and it's just mine.
No, I love that moment too.
It's terrifying giving your work to somebody else, even
Yeah.
someone you know and trust, because like it's this vulnerable thing now.
Yeah.
And
isn't that crazy? Because that's the whole point of writing a book, is that eventually it's got to go to the unknown, and everyone's going to have an opinion, which is great, but it's also not. So you're just sort of like trying to find that balance.
It is a balance, yeah, because I think there's some truth to the fact that, like, we write our stories knowing they'll go out into the world, but we don't necessarily write them for other people to read them, right? And so it's a balance of like honoring why we write for ourselves with writing for the world, which is what we're actually doing, you know.
Yeah.
And I think that that balance is like important to like, you know, keep in mind of, you know, when you're making final decisions and stuff like that. The rest of the world will see this, but yeah, no, that's so interesting to think about. Yeah,
Well,
I love
I had to kind of learn to just be done, like feel emotionally done with it, because I would always be able to fix something. You know, you always can find
yeah, you
something
can
to
find
tinker.
Yes.
And especially when it goes out into the world, it's like I need to just be done, because I need to move on to something else and just
absolutely.
let this go,
Yeah,
let this baby breathe. And it is very strange now, you know, having stuff to look back that I've written over the
yeah,
years
yeah.
and read something and be like, I don't even remember. I don't even remember
Right,
writing that. That
right.
sounds good. I'm glad I still like it, but I don't
Yeah,
know.
yeah.
I don't remember doing that.
Same. Yeah, I read old writing and I'm like, who did this? Like,
Yeah.
yeah,
Yeah.
that turn of phrase, I kind of like it, you know. But
Yeah.
I have little recollection of actually writing some of the stuff I found, and I'm just like, yeah, some of the stuff is like, oh yeah, I like this, and then some of the stuff is like, wow, I can tell I was a new author when
Yeah.
I was writing
Yeah.
it.
But it's good to see, you know, your
Yeah,
past self versus your now self. It's always good. Yeah.
yeah, yeah. I really like what Kirsha was saying too about the fact that you have to be like enjoying what you're doing and passionate and like have that genuineness to your book and authenticity. Because I remember reading this book, and it's canonically literature, right? And it's great. It was a really long story, like over 1,000 pages, and it's like it was well written. And then you get to the end, and it's like you could tell he was sick of it because it's like 1,000 page story, right? And he
Uh,
just rushed the ending and like got it done in 20 pages, and then you were like, "What was that?" Like
right.
it's kind of like that drawing where it's like the drawing of a horse, and then you get like the stick figure
This,
end because they
yeah.
didn't pay for the rest of the drawing.
Right.
And it's just like that rush at the end, but you can see like obviously like when he stopped caring while he was writing it, it
Yes.
felt like yeah,
Yeah.
yeah. Oh my gosh. Uh,
So, if I can ask, how do you make time for writing?
Man, I don't know. Just like my husband and I do try to work out a schedule so that he can kind of be available for the kids, because we have, my son's 6 now. So he's a
Mhm.
little bit older. He's a little bit more, you know, can take care of himself. But yeah, we try to find some time so that I'm uninterrupted, because I can't take any phone calls. I can't take any. I just have one question. I need a solid block of time, because it takes me so long to just
mhm.
get started, that
Mhm.
once I start, then I don't want to stop. But if you come in and ask me anything, even
You're
if
just
it's just
out
a
of it.
little simple, quick thing, you are going to destroy any progress
Mhm.
I was making. So, I mean, we were doing that 2 to 3 times a week. I was trying to get
Mhm.
about an hour and a half to 2 hours in at a time. Um, but yeah, I mean, I still carry the little notebook in my purse. So when I have an idea, I think I
Mhm.
do it almost like out of nervous habit. Like it just makes me feel
Right.
better that I can jot ideas down or just write
Yeah.
something down. So yeah, I
Right.
get it
Take
in
off
where
your
I
phone.
can. Sometimes it's at 3 in the morning. I don't know, just
Mhm.
whenever I can. I'm not, I don't
Yeah.
have, I'm not, I don't have a good set time. I'm not, I'm kind of a pantser in that way, where I'm just sort of, I have to be in a kind of certain mood. So it's
Right.
hard to schedule for that.
Yeah.
But I do try to do something just to get it started.
Or absolutely impossible to force it? Like,
Yeah. Yeah.
Yeah.
But at some point, even if I do force it, at least I have something to kind of look at
Mhm.
and try to figure out if that's going to work, or
Yeah.
if
Something to
that,
edit later.
yeah.
Do you have like any routine or ritual that like gets you into the writing mindset? Like you said, you have kind of a hard time like getting started. Do you do anything to like kind of pull you into writing mode or?
No, I think my process is obsessing over an
Mhm.
idea for a really long time and thinking
Until
about it
you
a
can't
lot.
stop? Yeah.
And then at some point I start writing out, almost like I'm writing out a summary or a back book description, just something
Or
to
mhm.
start getting an idea. of what I want to do. And then at some point, I feel like I get enough pieces, I guess, to start putting together the puzzle. And then then I can obsess over that part, which is where that's where I actually get stuff done, is if I can obsess over sitting down writing for that. Yeah.
No, I know some people who do kind of like the Pavlov's dog thing where they have a particular beverage or light a certain fragrance candle and listen to certain music for a book, and that kind of will like help them settle into writing mode a little bit sooner because they've got that like, oh, when I smell this and play this, that's when I write, and their brain like is just more ready to go.
Yeah, I wish I could do that.
I
I really do. Maybe someday. I don't know.
Yeah, I think about trying it, and then I'm like, that's a lot of effort. Though,
Yes.
to like just.
I would probably obsess over what music, what candle. I'd obsess over the wrong things
that
and
would
not
be me.
what I need to
spend
be.
8 hours putting together a playlist only to
make
skip
it perfect
song because I'm not in the mood.
Like, yeah. Yes, no, that is very true. That can happen too.
I put my drink down and I'm like, oh no, my drink is done. I have to go get the drink again. And then like it would be like, oh, maybe I should get a snack, and then I'm not writing. So
yeah.
Right, that is true.
Yep.
Yeah.
All right. Do you have like a favorite part of writing?
I really do like when it's kind of, I guess, in its earliest stages where I'm developing the character, developing a scene, and kind of, I guess, crafting everything. I really like being able to spend time on the details because nobody's expecting the book to come out, so I can just take as much time as I want getting to know how I'm going to work something out and what the story is going to be and what the surprises are going to be. I really do like all the in-house stuff so that I can mess with it as long as I want and do whatever I want. You know, once you start showing people, then you feel like you're making these little commitments that the character is going to be a certain way, and the story is going to be a certain way. But when it's all mine, and it just, because there's no judgment. It's just a really nice space to be in.
It's very freeing, yeah. Very liberating when only you know about it.
Yeah.
Yeah, it gives you plenty of time to do whatever you'd like. Yeah. Do you have a least favorite part of writing?
Gosh, I guess editing's really, I've gotten better with getting editing from editors because they're really there to help you. So if you're working with an editor that knows how to talk to you, that you know how to take criticism from, that's like a gift to have that relationship. So now I guess I'm more leaning towards, once it's out into the world, trying to find its audience, because that can be really a really tricky thing, trying to find people who would find it interesting and want to read it and then would actually read it.
Yeah.
That's a hard navigation. And you know, nobody likes getting a bad review, so I peek in on my reviews just to see if people are reviewing it, but I try not to read reviews.
Right.
But it's a slippery slope. It's like you want to know if there's a problem in a space that I need to work on, but then it's also like, but I've gone through betas and I've gone through an editor, so stay out of the
reader space.
Right.
Yeah.
Right.
No,
it's a hard navigate, but I stay off Goodreads, which I used to go on there all the time, not for myself, but just for other books. But now I just completely, because it's too tempting to just go over real quick. And my daughter even found an old book I had completely taken down, and she's like, "Mom, what is this?" And I'm like, "Oh my gosh, like I didn't even know that was still out there. I gotta fix that." So yeah.
No, I don't read reviews. Sometimes my sister will come across them and be like, "Oh, someone wrote a great review," and but like I do that for my own peace of mind, right?
Right.
Yeah, you don't
you
want to feel like
gotta guard that mental health. Yeah, I mean, again, like if I'm getting like a dozen 1-star, you know, and they're all saying the same thing, I'm gonna pay attention to
right, absolutely.
But then I don't need 100 bosses, which is what having each reviewer is like a boss. I don't need that much. You know, and they don't mean to be that way either. They're just saying their experience. And I
and you'll have
that.
reviews that are just like, it just was clearly not meant for you, and it doesn't mean anything about my book. You know, like
yes.
Yeah, I always tell people, if you have like big feelings about a bad review that you get, like go look up your favorite author and read their 1-star
Yeah.
reviews, because you'll
Oh yeah,
feel
that'll
so
make you
much.
feel good real quick.
Yeah, you'll
Yeah,
feel so much
I've
better.
done that.
Yeah,
Yep.
I feel like being an author, we're more, even though we're meant to have a thick skin, we are very sensitive people, like in general, and sensitive to rejection and sensitive to, criticism and all that stuff. So I tell people, like, if you can't read a bad review without getting super upset or without saying something back, like just
Then
avoid
just
them.
don't.
Yeah, don't even
I mean,
tempt
Do not
yourself. Yeah.
respond to reviews. Don't do it.
right.
No,
Oh
no,
no,
never do that.
Never.
no.
Yeah,
I mean,
that's a huge no.
I'm gonna write the stories
Yeah.
anyway.
Yeah,
So
yeah.
upsetting myself with, somebody who was just having a Tuesday and just wanted to leave a review,
Right,
mind their own
right.
business, and I'm not minding mine. Like that's on me.
Yeah, yeah,
Because I'm
yeah.
gonna write anyway. So I can either write in a headspace where I feel good about what I'm doing, or I can get myself upset.
Right, because we already,
So
a lot of us feel like imposters already. So, like, don't add to the doubt.
yeah.
And because you do, I feel
Yes.
like it works better. Writing works better when you have a certain sense of confidence
Mhm.
in the writing that you're doing, right?
Mhm.
You may not think you're the best writer in the world, but if you have too much doubt, then that will affect your writing ability,
Yeah.
I do think. Yeah.
Yeah.
Yes. At
Yeah.
some point, I think you do have to find peace knowing that you put out the very best book you could put out. This was
Yeah.
your best work at the time. And something interesting, though, is with indie publishing, say in 5 years you have grown as an author, you want to go back and re-upload your manuscript to be better, maybe fix some formatting issues, or you found a typo, you can actually go and fix that. Like there's
Yep.
no punishment for fixing it now.
Yeah.
Right.
I love updating the cover art. And I've
Yes.
lost track of how many
Yeah,
times
it's
I've done that for
fun.
other books. I love
Yeah.
doing that.
You can
Right.
update
Right
the
now,
art.
my
Yeah.
husband does do my cover art. He's a designer, so
Oh,
I
nice.
just
Yeah.
tell him what I want. Oh my gosh, that makes a huge difference because it is not cheap putting out.
Right.
It's a lot.
It is.
So, but yeah, I do like having the control where you can go in and you can tweak a sentence or something and re-upload it and fix it. So
Yeah,
yeah, that is
yeah.
definitely a nice thing.
Yeah, yeah. No, and it can be fun to like revisit things. Obviously, years later, you don't want to do it like immediately
No.
after release or
No.
anything.
Yeah.
You'll spend your whole life writing the same book.
Yes.
But yeah,
Yeah.
it can be fun to revisit a project and be like, oh, what I do now, what I can do now, I'm gonna revamp a little. But it's also fine to be like, yeah, I wrote that 10 years ago. It's not as good as what I'm writing now, but that's okay. It's still good, good enough. Yeah.
Yeah. I think that I get like, it's for me again, finding peace knowing that I did the
Yeah.
best I could, but
Yeah.
also finding peace knowing that it's not irreversible.
Yes, yes.
I'm not
Right,
saying
we're not like
that.
putting the keys on the Gutenberg press. You know what I mean? It's very easy to upload the new file now. It's not.
Yeah, you
Yeah.
just swap it out. So at some point you have to give yourself some grace and just be like, forgive the parts of you that aren't perfect or weren't perfect at the time, and just keep going, keep writing, keep telling your stories.
Yeah. Sometimes I just cry a lot just to get that out of the way, just to feel better.
Right.
And then I get to the fixing part. Yeah.
No,
So
I mean, crying
yeah,
is
I do not have the thick skin that I should have. But from that, I've just learned the best way for me to and how I should work. I've learned like what I need to do to be productive and not be too depressed about it.
No, and that's what I mean is like we should all be making accommodations for ourselves. So if we know that we are very sensitive to criticism or rejection, then like don't look at the reviews. Like that's perfectly acceptable to just avoid. Because like I said, we should have a thick skin, but in reality, we're people, with big feelings.
That is very true. Yeah. I think also the more self-aware a writer is of themselves as a person, the better they're going to do with the whole process. Like every writer has that moment where they write something and they're like, oh my God, this is the best thing I have ever written. Like this is like touching God. And then like a day or two later, they're going to look at it and be like, I need to burn this. I got to set it on fire. This is horrible.
Or what are words?
Everyone feels that way.
Yeah.
So knowing that you're going to have that high and bracing for that low.
Right.
Especially for myself, it really helps me to kind of keep this even. It's like, yeah, I feel good about it, but I need
Yeah,
to
makes
focus
me
on something
even
else
keeled about
because
it.
I got
Yeah,
to keep
yeah.
going. Yeah, so knowing yourself too, the type of writer and the way that the ebbs and flows for yourself, I think that
Yeah,
can really help
yeah.
too. Yeah.
No, that's great. That is really great advice of keeping in mind that you will have those highs and lows.
Hmm.
And it could even be about the same paragraph. You could feel
Yeah.
that high and that low about. Yeah,
Oh
yeah.
yeah.
I love that. What would you say influences your writing?
Right now it's just sort of, I think, society, just everything that's going on, I think heavily influences. When I wrote Being the Dead Girl, um, I kind of was looking at how, as a society, we deal with death and dying. And we're very private, quiet people. And it's like we don't know how to handle grief for other people, let alone for ourselves. And we find, people try to comfort and they say things like, well, this is just meant to be. They're in a better place now.
Mm-hmm.
And it really made me start to think, but what is a better place? Like what
Mm-hmm.
the stages of grief and how important they are. Because even the main character, even though she's dead, she does go through the stages of grief because she's
Mm-hmm.
lost her existence and all her plans that go with it.
Mm-hmm.
But yeah, really just at that time, especially with pandemic going on, I think I was just thinking a lot more about how we view the afterlife and the world. And when you take away all the physical things, all the things that we compete over, like money and what we think so important, you take all that away. What's left? Like what's worth fighting
Mm-hmm.
for? What are the things that are really important to you? And they're the relationships. And so
Mm-hmm.
that just from the world kind of falling apart, that was sort of what came to mind more. So I'm really heavily
Right.
influenced by my society and what's going on in my community and just the way that I think about it. And yeah,
Yeah.
just the idea of and I wanted that in a teen format
Mm-hmm.
because I think it's life and death just hits more when you're younger. The idea of
Yeah.
that idea of what's going to happen and what's
Mm-hmm.
important to me now, and it's really so easy to get caught up in all of the drama of high school and everything because that's all you've had.
Yeah, that's all you
So
know. Mm-hmm.
right, so to just kind of think of things beyond and beyond yourself and beyond this point in time, just kind of focusing on having goals beyond this and to go beyond this and what's really important, that
Yeah.
really carried for my more current. Yeah.
Yeah, no, I love that answer too because it's just like grief is just well, it's love that doesn't have anywhere to go anymore. And like
Yes.
grief is such a powerful emotion, but like all emotions serve a purpose. Like they all do something for us. That's why we have them. And grief is to
Hmm.
show us what we value. So
Hmm.
I love how you said that like when the world and all the physical stuff is gone, what's left and what matters to you. Like that's just
Hmm.
such a perfect connection to the grief, right? Yeah.
Hmm.
Yeah, I love that. I'm gonna have to check that story out because I'm fascinated now.
It's
Yeah,
very good.
yeah. No, that is like such an
Now
interesting. The premise
that's
is so
mixed with
good. Yeah,
an horror and murder mystery, but
even better.
that's
Even
the
better,
heart.
I
That's
say.
the heart
Yeah,
of it. Is just
yeah,
that's the grounding. Yeah.
Oh
yeah.
yeah.
No,
I
that
have my
appeals to me even
theories
more.
and
Mhm.
I'm so excited to see if I'm right or not.
Yeah, yeah. No, I love that, and yeah, I love that answer.
I love, love, love murder mysteries so
Mhm.
much. Like I
Right.
write fantasy and it's still wrought with horror, like murder mysteries. So
Yeah, and the thing is like the ultimate murder mystery is figuring out your own murder too, right?
yes.
Hmm.
Like, can you imagine like a better puzzle to solve than like what happened
What
to you?
happens? Yeah.
Hmm.
Yeah, no, that's fascinating. Um, do you ever struggle with writer's block, and how do you overcome it?
Oh yeah. I used to have writer's block all the time, and then I just I got to the point where I think I just built habits of once I'm fixated on something and I want to work through it, it's like I don't let go of it anymore. I used to have really bad writer's block, and I would, take walks, or I'd take breaks, or I would just, you know, do something else creative. So I was still kind of in that mind space, but I wasn't feeling like overwhelmed and burdened by my writing. But now, yeah, I feel like it's only taken me almost 50 years, but I finally kind of, I think, got the right triggers to where I'm just always kind of that line of writing at this point. But yeah, I
Yeah,
used to,
yeah.
I did probably everything at one point when I had writer's block, from not writing for several months to trying to write other things. I mean, just whatever would work. You just throw spaghetti at the wall
Right.
and just figure it out. So, but yeah, I guess I can say, as you get older, maybe
Yeah,
you kind of figure out other ways, and that isn't necessarily so much of a problem at some
yeah,
point.
yeah. Okay. Yeah. Well, I think what it is like we understand our process
Yeah,
better the more we do it, and so we work with ourselves better.
yes, I think that's a
And
really good way of saying
yeah,
it.
because
Yeah.
like writer's block can be a number of issues, right? It could
Hmm.
be like you're trying to force your story in a direction that's not working or not
Hmm.
natural, or you're trying to make your character do something out of character, or it could
Hmm.
just be burnout. So all of those are going to have very different looking solutions.
Yeah.
But like if you don't know why you are having the block, then then you're gonna struggle. But if you understand your process and yourself more, because you're
Yeah.
older and you've had experience and you know yourself better, um,
Yeah.
then
The
I think it
hardest
does become easier to deal with. Yeah.
the hardest, longest amount of writer's block I had was about
Yeah.
5 years, and
Oh
it was right after high school, starting college.
yeah.
And what happened was, and I realized more in hindsight, is that when I was writing YA as a teenager, I was writing as an angry teenager who
Mhm.
was in it. And, unfortunately, I became an adult and I couldn't write
Right.
from the anger anymore because I wasn't an angry teenager anymore.
Right.
So I had
Right.
to find a new way of writing. And it was almost like learning to write with your left hand when you're right-handed. And
Right.
it was a very bizarre time in my life because I tried everything. I tried writing plays and poetry and just like
Mhm.
everything else, trying to get back into, because I knew I wanted to write young adult, but I don't know if maybe I was being more the preachy adult talking to my teenage self. I don't
Right.
know.
I
But
well, I
yeah,
feel
that
like
was,
when you turn 20, you kind of have that mindset of like I'm
yes,
an adult now, and that kind of
yeah,
condescension that comes until you're
yeah,
like,
I
wait,
did.
I'm still the same person though. I'm not like suddenly, you know,
Right.
on another
Yeah.
level. Yeah.
But that was probably my toughest time because I had to figure out
Right.
the type of writer I was now. Like, what did that mean
Yeah.
now, and how did she work
Yeah.
now? So, yeah.
No,
Yeah.
I love that you explored that though, and just you did figure it out. Like that's great.
When you said that, like, you write from like a place of almost obsession where you have this idea
Mm.
and it's sort of like it's a new shiny stone and you're turning it over and looking around and like, you're
Right.
exploring this whole new world and plot and everything. I do that too, to a
Hmm.
certain extent. And so writer's block can occur with me when something in my real life is so distracting that I don't have time to turn over in this idea. Like all this other stuff is shoving all the inspiration out of
Yeah.
my head, and there's
Mm.
only
Yeah.
these big problems that are crushing me. So like sometimes, I got to just close the computer and deal with those
Yeah.
real issues
Yes.
before I
Yeah.
can go
Yeah.
back
Sure.
to this
Sure.
happy place where I'm writing from.
Yeah, the age you were struggling with, you were also probably going to school and using your brain for a lot of other big things.
Hmm.
And you just might not have had like the brain power and energy to
Yeah.
devote to like creative writing, because like if you're
Yeah.
writing essays and you're taking classes and you're working and you're doing all life stuff for
Mhm.
the first time on your own, having to fend for
Yeah.
yourself as
There's
a young one. Yeah.
there was also a little bit of, and I saw this more in my sister because she is an artist.
Yeah,
Mhm.
And
yeah.
she had a natural drawing ability, so
Mhm.
she was one of those kids that just was so good, and she didn't just draw well, but her perspective of things was
Right.
amazing, like it
Yeah.
just spot on. And then she got really more serious with art class. And then it was like she had to learn to draw the way they taught her
Teacher.
to draw.
Yeah,
Right.
yeah.
You have to learn to do it the correct way. Like you can get by for so long being a natural, but you do need to learn how to measure
Skills.
and how the
Yeah.
body works and everything.
Mhm.
And for a while, she felt like she was kind of going backwards a little
Yeah.
bit in her ability. And I think I kind of hit that too with writing because you're
Mhm.
always learning and growing. But at some point, especially when you're trying to absorb for better
Mhm.
all the other stuff, it can make it would make my current work feel very like not sincere and not good enough because I was
Mhm.
really trying to hit that next level. So there's sometimes you do feel like you're stumbling a little bit, but that's when you're
Or
about to
it
hit
becomes
your
disjointed
next
because
thing. Yeah.
you're leveling
You
up.
just
Yeah,
gotta
yeah.
push through that too. So
Yeah, no,
yeah.
that makes a lot of sense. Yeah, because we all have like inherent ability or natural talent for
Mm,
storytelling, but learning the craft bits of it, learning the skills, and then trying to apply them, you can
yes.
feel like you get more awkward at first.
Yes. Because
Yeah,
I think it is because you are kind of like telling more than the showing because
right.
you've got this new thing you've just learned, but you haven't quite learned how to incorporate it
Mhm.
into what you're doing.
Seamlessly yet. Yeah,
Yeah.
not yet.
So
Yes.
yeah.
Well, and plus there can be that thing where like as you learn something new, you go back and look at what you did and you start to see all of its flaws.
Mhm.
Mm,
Because like
Yeah.
my first rough draft for my first book, I was like, I'm the best. This is the best story ever. Like, wow, this is going to be amazing. You have all of these really big dreams. And then you start sending it to beta readers and your editor, and you're like, oh, I don't actually know how commas work.
Mhm.
And someone's like, oh, should this
right.
be capitalized or not? And you're like, I don't really know because I thought I knew how capitals work, but does it? Because there's actually
Right,
very nitty
right.
gritty details about certain capitals. So, and then on top of that, they're like, so you have this big plot hole, and you're like, oh,
Oh,
How
yeah.
did
But
I
Why
not see
did I
that?
see
Yeah.
that?
as you
Yeah.
Yeah.
learn more, you start to look at your own work and you see the flaws, and it can again be paralyzing
Yes.
because you have to go back and fix it, and it's such a big job. Or you start to wonder if you even have what it takes even to
Mhm.
make it work. And you
Right.
just want to throw it in the trash and
Yeah, that's all
move
part of the
on.
journey.
It's part
It
of the
is. It
journey.
It
It
is.
is.
absolutely is part of the journey.
And that's
Yeah.
why I say like you need a little bit of confidence because you can doubt yourself out of writing all the
Mhm.
time. Yeah.
There are
Yeah.
so
Yeah.
many people who will, say to you, like, oh, I wish I could write a book. Like,
Right.
oh, I have this book I've always wanted to write, but I never
Right.
have time, or I can't write it, or I don't have the ability, or like, and no, you just gotta try.
Yeah,
Yeah.
yeah.
I run into the people who seem to think writing's not difficult. I'm
Right.
like,
Oh, I got the
okay,
best story
go
to tell.
ahead.
I'm gonna write
I
a book
can't
one
wait to
day.
read
Yeah.
it.
Yeah.
Well,
Yeah.
I actually ran into a guy who's like, "Are you like to write?" I'm like, "Yeah." I have this book idea, but I don't want to tell you because I don't want you to steal it. And I'm like, "My guy, I promise you, it
Yeah.
probably already exists, but I definitely am not going to steal your idea."
Right. Your
So
idea is not the
That's a little
golden
bit
ticket.
insulting, isn't
Yeah.
it?
it's
Yeah.
Okay.
funny. Well, and there are people that are, yeah, I want to write, and it's like, you know, get through your first 50 pages, your first
Right.
75 pages, because that's people can usually get pretty good at, and then they hit that point, and then they
Mm.
don't know what to do anymore
That
because
saggy
they've
middle.
done all this build
Yes.
up and they don't know how to finish it.
Yes. Yes. You have to practice finishing. I tell that to people
Mhm.
all the time. You have to practice finishing. So if you need to do it in a short story or two, you know what
Yes,
I mean? Just
yes,
because there's so much you learn from actually finishing a story, right?
yeah,
So your
yeah.
great idea is
Or
great, but you
I
need to
used to like not
Mhm.
like what I was doing. So
Yeah.
instead of just putting it aside, I would write out what I had planned to do because I may come back a few months later and be like, oh, this is really good. I wonder how
Right.
I was going to finish that. Now I have kind
Yes.
of a note for myself to kind of figure
Mhm.
out
Yeah,
where I was
yeah.
going.
Yeah.
Yes.
Yeah, I
I
used to do that
absolutely have
too.
to do that because I have the memory of a goldfish.
Yeah.
Oh, your books are so complicated. I don't know how you keep track of everything. I do
Yeah.
not know how you do that. Like, even if I had a writing Bible for your book, I could not. I could not keep up. I'd have, like, my wall would just have to have a bunch of strings and pictures attached trying to keep track of
Right. And
everything. That's a lot.
wild hair.
It's a
Yeah.
lot. Yeah.
Pointing. Yeah. Trying to make the connection.
Yeah. I got to keep it on the download just a little bit.
Yeah. Yeah.
Thank you. That's a really nice compliment. Yeah, my notes are pretty chaotic, but
Right.
it comes together.
Yeah. And the magic happens.
Yeah.
It happens
Yes.
eventually.
Yes.
Things come together, and it looks like I planned it that way from the very beginning, and not
Yeah.
the 75th run through. Yeah.
And that's what Neil Gaiman says, is like, the first draft is you telling yourself the story, and then you edit it and make it look like you knew what you were doing all along. Yeah.
Now he is one of the writers I do like. I would say he's my favorite,
Yeah.
but I like him because his stories, I can't always tell what's happening. Like, it makes sense when
Right.
I'm on the ride, but I can't predict. And he made me realize that I lean towards safe storytelling, where I kind of want to have this comfortable, happy ending almost. And
Right.
his endings, they're not good, bad, safe, or not. They're logical to the story he's writing. And that sometimes makes me uncomfortable. And I like
Right.
that, because I'm constantly trying to figure out what's
Right.
going
Where's
on.
it going? Yeah. Where's
Yes.
it going?
Yes.
No,
So
he
I
is.
appreciate him so much for that. Yes.
Yeah. All right. We're gonna let Kirsha ask her favorite question,
Oh.
and then we'll wrap up.
What has been your most significant writing victory so far?
Probably writing the series, because I've never done that before. I've only written one-off. So to think out and plot a series, that's really satisfying and
Yeah.
overwhelming and humbling. And yeah, I don't know that I'll do it again, but I'm glad I attempted it, and I like
Yes.
it so far still. So
Yeah.
that has been a really good. I'm proud of myself for that. I did good with it. I'm not saying that it's all good. I'm just saying that I'm proud of myself for doing
No,
that.
kudos. You should be
And you
proud of
should
yourself.
absolutely be proud of yourself for that.
It's not easy, and you've accomplished it, so that's amazing. Yeah. We do want to give you the chance to let our audience know where they can find out more about you and your books online. So here's where you share your socials.
My books are available on Amazon and Kindle Unlimited. I also have tmperkins.com website, and you can sign up for newsletter. I'm also on TikTok. Yeah, that's about it right now.
Yeah. Well, it was absolutely our pleasure talking with you. This has been a wonderful, amazing conversation. So thank you so much for joining
Thank you
us.
for
I know
having
you're
me.
busy as a mom. Yes, yes. And thank you to everyone that is listening along at home. Remember, there's more than one way up a mountain, and our next episode will air on Friday as usual. If you're interested in being a guest on the show, you can find us on social media at The Tellnut Show, or you can email us at thetellnutshow@gmail.com. Thanks again for listening.
Thanks again for listening. If you enjoyed the show, consider subscribing and liking. We appreciate all the support. Julia J.K. Allen is an author, editor, and coach, and can be found at hijingsrudder.com.
Kirsha Fox is an author, avid reader, gamer, and mother to four, and you can find her at kirshafox.com. Thanks, and see you next time.